Plug in and go faster with TraceGains. Talk to a TraceGains representative to receive a demo and discount just for listening to this podcast. Head over to tracegains.com/NPD-podcast today. Hello, Peas on Moss listeners. You probably noticed that I've been offline for 2 weeks. Well, it's no secret that life is busy. Work is great, and I've been able to host a few community conversation events and just completed a Real Food, Real Stories story facilitation training. I'm also a volunteer board member for the Quilisasket Education Fund and the Drexel Food Lab, so the podcast has taken a little extension to its calendar. I'm still committed to bringing you great episodes with conversations with leaders and subject matter experts in the food product development and research chef world. And now you'll just have to wait a little longer between episodes. COVID quarantine allowed me to record some incredible conversations with normally busy traveling experts, and I'm still working through those recordings. It's been mostly a one-woman job, with production provided by Moon Palace Productions and website help provided by Shape and Creative. 2 corporate sponsors, Icon Foods and TraceGains, have made all of that possible, and I'm hopeful for 2021. Thank you for continuing to listen to the show. I find myself getting into conversations about careers and career management often, and the conversations occur at every level, from executive leadership to entry level. Common themes include learning to identify our unique skills, experiences, and core values, and then communicating them effectively to achieve the objectives. And these objectives vary as much as the unique individual stories. There isn't a single path to get there, even when your origin might be in common with a peer. Today's episode is all about embracing the characteristics that make us different and to leverage those into strengths through learning, growing, and eventually performing at a high level. My guests today are Chris McAdams from Culinary Culture and Fork and Path, and Neela Paul of Neela Paul Coaching. Miss Paul spent her first career leading technical teams for Wrigley Mars, Kraft Foods, and Panda Restaurant Group, and then is starting her second career as a leadership coach for leaders of those very same types of teams. Culinary Culture is an independent consultancy founded by chef Allison Rittman and performs services ranging from food trend research and gold standard recipe development to commercialization and trade show representation. Fork and Path is Chris and Sadie McAdams' food and travel blog based in Denver, Colorado. Chris McAdams is one of those professionals that you remember the first time you meet him. Our first meeting was at the RCA conference, just like so many other great friends I know in this industry. Chris was different. His quick smile, sharp wit, and thoughtful insights were a reason to take a second look at his business cards and to discuss his perspectives on the career field. We found out quickly that we're both U.S. Air Force veterans, and we both attended culinary school in our late 20s, putting us about 8 years behind our peer group. What resulted was an ambitious hustle, propelled by a supervisor who believed in him, and an insatiable, inquiring mind. Chris had joined us on a focused podcast about his origin story, so this time we focused on his insights about career growth hustle and the mentality that is needed to become successful in the field. You grabbed every little piece of experience that you've gained over time and just have been able to leverage that or parlay that into really identifying what makes you a distinct leader in this industry and what is really going to play well going forward. And I just love that, again, that you look at your experiences and say, okay, well, maybe not the exact tasks are things that I'm doing now, but what can I apply from each of these experiences? And you absolutely just showed one of the best examples I've ever heard. Outstanding, seriously.
Thank you. But it's definitely, that's why when I first joined the RCA, I got on the student board. And I think a big part of that was because of kind of like what you highlighted there with, everybody has a messy past. And I really wanted to have a chance to talk with students coming in and sort of making that adjustment from college, because so many young people are going directly from high school to college and then college into the career field. And it is a tough adjustment. I mean, that's a huge maturation point that's happening in such a quick amount of time. And the expectations can be so high. And sometimes it's just nice to hear somebody who is in a career field or in a job that they really love and find out that they had a messy background, but it worked out for them. And also that, like, you'll get there. Like, just be patient with it, like be passionate, be determined, be focused, but you'll get there, and don't try to rush it. Let it happen as it should. And I enjoyed my time on the student board, because that's what I found with a lot of the young people coming in, was they were really excited for it, but nervous also. And it's like, that's okay. It's good to be nervous, but hone that, like make it a focus for you then.
That's such a good point. There are two things with that I'd love to hear from you. Firstly, you joined the RCA board or the RCA student board, because you wanted to get to talk with students, and also I think kickstart your career. At least for me, being involved in the RCA as an active volunteer has helped me grow a network and connections to professionals in all stages of their careers, whether we're starting out and we're just learning terminology, or people who were the original founders of the RCA, from the ACF. So talk to me first about how or whether the being on the student board helped you build that network.
It really did. Getting on the student board, it helped a lot. Opportunity to talk with and meet some of the leaders that are kind of working in and with the RCA on a daily basis. So it really, I guess the best way to put it is just it's exposure. And a lot of times, what helps like a career advance is just exposure and openness and willingness to meet and absorb information from more people. And that was really what I wanted to do, because I felt like, I was 28, 29 years old when I started culinary school. So I already felt like I missed that whole section there. So when I came into this career field, I'm meeting 22-year-olds that have a culinology degree and have been working in restaurants since they were 12. And so like, I felt like I was like, man, I am behind the curve on a lot of these things. So I really wanted to jump headfirst in. And part of that was getting on the RCA board so I could meet the people that are sort of forming the outlook for the future of this career field, and glean information from them and take guidance from them and learn from their mistakes and their successes, and, see where their footsteps have led them.
And I will echo that. I felt the same way when I was in culinary school. I was older than a lot of the individuals, and I brilliantly chose to go to culinary school at the height of the recession. And so there were actually a lot of us, quote unquote, career changers, a couple of veterans. And I couldn't shake the feeling of regret that I was so much older than people. I was so behind the eight ball. It was like, it felt like I hadn't even taken any shots on goal, at this point in my life. And I'll give you, now that that's 10 years ago, thinking at 26, feeling all of the despair of, oh my God, I'm so behind. It's like, okay, chill. You're not even 30,
Sure.
Not even 40, whatever it is.
Right.
But at the time, I was so embarrassed of the fact that I had felt like I'd wasted my time up to this point. And what I'm hearing from your description of your path is, forget all that. Don't waste your brain cells on feeling bad that you took a different way to get here. Just move forward and find the lessons that you've learned from each of those other steps along the way.
Absolutely. I think moving forward is huge, and you can't look back. There's no time for that. And getting good guidance and getting a good group of people around you, getting in with culinary culture and having Chef Allison Rittman was so meaningful for my career going forward, because she believed in me, and I didn't think she should, honestly. Like at the time I was like, man, you're taking a high risk right now. But she did believe in me, and so much so that she gave me the confidence to just kind of go. Like she didn't micromanage me. She just handed me projects and expected me to do them. And if I had issues, she was there to help me with it. But she also expected me to find my own answers. And that was hugely confidence building for me, to kind of show myself that, okay, like I can do this. Like I can use the assets I have, use whatever is in my own bankroll, but also like go outside of that and be open and use the RCA and just reach out to people and have that willingness. So it's definitely, having a support group is very important when succeeding forward. But I think in our career field, getting a support group, and a great support group, is not difficult.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that really segues into, as a manager, being a sponsor of young younger or earlier career individuals in your chain of command, whether that's directly in your chain of command or through a mentorship level sort of that the RCA could set up or that you could build with your network in the RCA. It's being trusted and expected to do great things if we managers, we with the experience, get out of the way and let the younger person fall forward a little bit. Certainly be there so it's not a complete face plant, but to put that trust and expectation in someone to say, I believe that you can do this. You have the potential within you. So here are the resources that you need. Now go do something cool and I'll be here if you need me.
Absolutely. And having that safety net there is great, but also having that push. For me, the push was even more important. Like I liked having the net, but I really needed someone to say, like, I expect you to do this. Like, do your job. And so like that, it put the onus on me. And I'm the type of person that's driven by that. Like that responsibility meant a lot to me. And I wanted to show that I could do it. But I think a lot of times with employees in the chain of command, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody to believe in them and to give them the opportunity to show that they can do it. And the best part about it is when they succeed. Like honestly, when they get it, and it's so exciting for everybody involved. But that doesn't mean that there's not plenty to learn from the failures as well. Like things mess up, mistakes happen, communication gets lost. Like it's the nature of any industry. But you can learn so much from that as well. And sometimes those mistakes and those lessons are more meaningful than the successes. And I think that's kind of a statement that pervades most career fields, but there's a certain truth to it as well. Like we learn so much sometimes when we mess something up, so much more than when we do it right. And that can really benefit us going forward. So it's good to get things right, but it's also not the worst to make mistakes. You just have to learn from them. And I think that's the biggest thing. If you make a mistake, don't repeat that mistake. Make it once, learn from it, understand it, take your lessons and go forward.
Yeah, and I think that's something for the younger people that I've gotten to manage or have watched peers manage younger folks, is perhaps the fear of making a mistake or the fear of, well, what if I'm not a high performer? Can I not then, be trusted to make these mistakes? And I would say, firstly, you're not going to know yourself if you're a high performer just yet. You certainly know the type of worker you are, how hard you like to tackle a problem, but don't worry about whether you're the high performer in the group. Mm-hmm. Move forward into the question and say, let me dig into this and see how far I can get. Come up with a plan of how you'd like to adjust or address the challenge. And then, if you're really not sure about that next step, call up your boss and say, hey, this is my strategy based on the information that I've got. What do you think of this direction? And they should be able to say, yeah, that sounds good. Or, hey, yeah, this is a great foundation. If you tweak it just a little bit, you should be fine. Mm-hmm. And, getting past the, say, embarrassment of going through and saying, hey, is this the right direction? Get over that quickly. That's just an internal, voice that we just have to learn to talk over. And, at least I mentioned this earlier, falling forward is still going forward. And to your point, Chris, don't make the same mistake, but don't be afraid of making a mistake.
Absolutely. I think a fear of making mistakes often leads to either hesitancy or a lack of risk taking. And you're never going to get anywhere without taking a risk. Like at some point you have to take a risk and you have to, you got to do a half court shot and see what happens. And if it doesn't hit, hey, at least you learned something from it. But I agree. Like, I think it's very important to, like, I don't think anybody sets out knowing that they're going to be the high performer in the group. That's something that just works itself out. Everything is circumstantial as well. Like no one's ever going to be the high performer in every group, everywhere, all the time, always. Like everybody has their spot and their niche where they work and where they don't work. And sometimes it's going to be you and sometimes it's going to be someone else, but you should always celebrate those victories as a team because that's really what you're building towards, is that common goal going forward.
Peas on Moss will be right back.
FoodEdge brings together the industry's largest brands, disruptive startups, and leading researchers to discuss the future of food. October 21st to the 23rd, we're going digital, providing attendees with key industry insights and actionable takeaways to help adapt and succeed in the industry's new normal. Over 3 days, we'll host tracks on emerging food business, industry trends, and food investment. Each track is optimized to drive maximum engagement and value to our attendees. And yes, there is virtual networking too. No Zoom fatigue here. We're thrilled to welcome speakers including Nick McCoy, co-founder at Whipstitch Capital, Seth Goldman, co-founder of Honest Tea and Eat the Change, Isha Detter, executive director of New Harvest, Marcia Hooper, co-founder at Branch Venture Group, and many more. Special thanks to Motif Foodworks, the Consulate of Canada in Boston, Bay State Milling, Nutter Law, and Rooted Food Sales for their sponsorship of this event. Check out www.foodedge.co for more information on the event, and please use promo code PeasOnMoss VIP for 20% off your ticket. See you there.
Welcome back to Peas on Moss. Neela Paul was introduced to me by Jeff Kreis, the CEO of the Garlic King and the California Garlic Company, because he thought we would have some powerful conversations. And wow, he was right. Neela and I have enjoyed 2 conversations about career management, self-management, and communication, verbal and nonverbal, for technical folks. As an executive of a technical group at major brands, Neela knows firsthand how vital it is to communicate clearly and to form a team that can perform the duties required within the budget and on time. She has a refreshing insight to how we can look at the group formation dynamics and move quickly through storming and norming to performing. And she gives advice to individuals and team managers to start thinking about their team dynamics differently.
So everyone has had situations that didn't go quite as well as they wished. And by sort of unpacking what happened, discussing what the different learnings were and what the opportunities are for the future to do things a little bit differently, my clients typically figure that out on their own by saying, oh, when I said X, I think that person heard Y. And then we talk about what else could you have said and how else could you have said it, perhaps, that would have made it more clear. And through that, they then practice it in their future conversations and try things. It's about expanding your comfort zone and realizing that you don't have all the answers and being okay with the fact that you don't have all the answers. I think sometimes technical people especially are the smartest people in the room, and they very much think that they already know everything. And that's been a struggle for almost every single technical person I know, to be able to say, okay, I'm really good at these certain things, but here's other things I need to continue to grow and evolve. And as I do, I'm going to actually be able to bring wonderful technical ideas to the table and actually implement it in my organization.
That's one of the ways that certainly I have felt coming into some meetings. The other challenge that I face in my voice in a cross-functional team is actually feeling like I don't have something good to contribute. And I think that's partly I'll attribute it to my own imposter syndrome, which often manifests itself as, why do I deserve or why do I have the right to speak up right now? Is that, talk to me about imposter syndrome and what you've observed in your career and in your coaching work.
Imposter syndrome, the big myth here, it's not just for some people. Everybody feels it in some way, shape, or form, literally. And many people overcome it in a way, and others figure out a way to just use it and continue to get better and better. Let me tell you what I believe imposter syndrome is. We all know that when we speak or we say something, we're taking a risk. People are judging us. And the idea of being judged is just so difficult, because then we think that somehow or the other we might be less, either important, less smart, less valuable than somebody else. And that just creates inside of us this terrible feeling, which, to be honest, paralyzes our ability to think well, because our consciousness is all freaked out, and we're thinking about all this dramatic stuff that's not happening. But in our brain, we're in this very odd space. And so imposter syndrome really is what happens when we think that somehow or the other what we are either communicating or saying is not really respected. And that feeling of disrespect sort of turns into, I should never have said something in the first place. I'm going to learn a lesson here. I'm just going to keep my mouth closed. And unfortunately, what happens is often many people shut down, and then they're afraid to take the risk again. So honestly, what growth is about is learning from every single thing and then having the courage to just step up and do it again and again, because that's all it's going to ever be. We're always going to make mistakes because we keep growing. Whenever we grow, we take on challenges we've never done before. You didn't know you were going to do a podcast when you were 10 years old. This is new. So the first time you did a podcast, it must have felt strange. And even the third or fourth or 15th time. But as you did it more and more, I'm assuming you became more and more comfortable doing it. It's that way with everything. So the idea of imposter syndrome is overcoming those voices in your head that are telling you you don't belong here and other people are better at this than you. So you should just let them do it.
How, as a leader or a manager of an organization, could I help, direct reports or even indirect within our organization, help technical professionals communicate better? Is it hand out your card to everyone I've met, or are there things that I can do to help those around me?
Oh, very much. Of course, there is. Leadership is something we do for each other. And that's what's so beautiful about the mystery of leadership. In the old model, it's a very pyramidal structure, right? The leader is above you and he or she is the one that you defer to. But what we've really learned is that leadership is really something we all do with and for each other. So yes, each of us as individuals, and even, when we see someone who's a technical person who may be struggling a bit in terms of how to share their voice and to be bold enough and courageous enough to take a risk and say what they think. The key, I think, especially early on, is to create an environment that's safe. Nobody wants to feel like they're stupid, and nobody wants to feel that their ideas are not important or valuable. So encouraging talk and thinking, ideation, the idea of brainstorming together. It doesn't mean you have to create a kumbaya culture all the time, but certainly when emotions start to get high, often when things go wrong in a project, it starts to get rather heated. I think it becomes the responsibility of everybody on that team to de-escalate the situation, find a way to bring new ideas and new thinking to the table in a very calm manner whenever possible, and then co-create something that can be owned by everyone. And then when people feel like they're part of the solution, they own the whole thing. They're far more committed to not just making it work, but finding really elegant and efficient solutions to implementing them. And that's why you bring the best thinking out in each other. So I'm such a big believer in redefining leadership, and each person, regardless of level in the organization, when they see themselves as the leader and a person who's at stake for everyone else on the team, they're the ones who are going to more quickly and readily grow their own leadership presence and their influence and their careers, and their happiness and fulfillment in their jobs and in their life is going to grow because they feel like they're actually making a bigger difference.
What about for those who don't thrive in kind of the collaborative or cohort mentality, how do we engage them?
Well, it's interesting. It takes every single person, right? So some people, some technical leaders specifically, very much are these brilliant thinkers that want to work independently for most of the time. And through that independence, they actually create something just glorious. So for them, that isolation, if you will, or some kind of solitude or ability to really think by themselves gives them the space to really create something magical. And I think we have to appreciate and understand that we as humans are all different. So it's important to allow everyone the environment that brings out their best. Now, once that's also being done, it also needs some help to actually make it happen. Because very few people can actually take their own idea and without anybody else make it either commercialized or see the light of day. So there needs to be that. So I think the role of leaders and partners and colleagues working with an individual who tends to be wanting to work a little bit more alone or in isolation is to create a safe and easy way for that person to talk about what they've come up with or work together with someone who might be more comfortable talking about it, but still give them credit, because that's the other side of it. You know, often technical people have worked so hard, given so much of their blood, sweat, and tears into a project, and then often feel somewhat frustrated that someone else seems to have taken the credit for their idea. And that's difficult. And so I think creating fairness and just partnership will allow for all the different working styles of people to really be showcased and for everyone to thrive. And then when everyone thrives, all boats rise.
I recently had dinner with the director of a statewide program in California, and I was struck by his commitment to changing the culture of his division. In describing how his first 6 weeks have gone in his newly appointed role, he kept saying that he wanted to bring humanity back to the workplace, and he did that by introducing himself with his first name and by asking the staff about their lives, their families, and the challenges they're facing personally. Hello, working from home and becoming a homeschool teacher at the same time. He felt that fostering a culture of trust started with vulnerability and recognition that he didn't have all of the answers and didn't plan to. The focus on collaboration, on true peer-to-peer education, and on making the time to hear each person's voice were significant cultural changes in the workplace. As a director with significant executive power behind him, he can make these changes, and it could seem like we all have to wait to get to that level to start that process. But what we talked about was that this type of workplace culture, or any type of workplace culture, starts today, in your earlier career. The habits you form, the workplace culture you accept, and the way we perform our tasks, these are all attributes that you must take control of on day one and start building the right foundation for when you do promote to those leadership roles. Well, that's it for this episode. Let me know what you think of the guest perspectives, and please let me know if you're interested in joining the conversation as a guest or contributing an article. Thank you so much for continuing to listen to the Peas on Moss podcast. I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with your colleagues. Please let me know if there's a topic you'd like to hear more about, or to suggest an expert I could interview. If your company has the budget for it, I'd love to talk about advertisements on the show. I've also rolled out a Patreon page for individual donors. Your sponsorship offsets the cost of running the show, whether that's web hosting fees or production costs. I'll always be a research chef sharing information about our industry, and I hope you'll join the conversation. Thanks for tuning in. See you soon.